Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome. My name is Declan Kirrane. I am here with some wonderful colleagues in the Chrysler building in Manhattan in New York. And we are delighted to welcome you to today's plenary biodiversity meeting. And we'll get to why we're here in a couple of minutes. I will give some remarks before the formal opening. But before I do that, we are going to have some words of welcome from our hosts here today at the Spanish mission. So first of all, I'd like to call on Bruno Fernández Scrimieri. He is the Economic and Commercial Counsellor of Spain, Secretariat of State for Trade in New York, and he is depending on the Spanish Ministry of Trade, Industry and Tourism, or indeed Tourism, Trade. So you're very welcome. Bruno, please. Come in, Bruno. While waiting for Bruno, I'd like to call on Estefanía. Everybody just give us a couple more minutes. We're getting there.
Let's keep on going. Okay, Michael.
Do we want?
Michael's here.
Declan. Excellent. Are we looking at Javier's presentation? Michael? Sure.
Yeah.
Should be there.
Sit down. No.
We don't hear from Do we have Bruno?
Yes.
Bruno is here. Wonderful. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to have you all here.
So if you'd like to
Yes,
welcome.
my name is Bruno Fernández. I am the Senior Trade Commissioner of Spain here in New York. Spain has 5 trade commissions here in the United States. That is a sign of the importance of the United States for Spain and Spain for the United States. And here in New York, we have a close relationship with the United Nations, and my colleague Estefanía, she's in charge of these relations with the UN, and it's a very significant part of our work. And of course, for us, it's a great pleasure to have you all. It's an honor, and this board is specially made for these occasions. We are very delighted to have you, and I understand we will receive the presence of some ministers, and of course, please be very welcome and at your total disposal. And I hope this event will be very useful and very fruitful for this initiative. LifeWatch, Eric, and at your total disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're a very gracious host. Thank you. We're delighted to be here. Now I would like to call on Estefanía Sánchez Rodríguez.
Hello.
Hello, Estefanía.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Estefanía. As Bruno said, I also work as the Economic Counselor in the Spanish mission to the UN, basically helping the Spanish companies take advantage of procurement opportunities in the UN. And I will leave it at that because I know you have a very charged meeting full of very interesting stuff, and I hope it's going to be a very good one. And let me pass the word on to Michael Wieting.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. Michael.
Hello, Declan. Thank you so much for being here. This is a very interesting initiative, and as the Trade Promotion Commissioner for Andalusia, for EXTENDA in New York, this is our pleasure. We share offices with IFEX, with the Trade Commission of Spain, and yes, this is a very interesting initiative, and I hope that you are going to be really successful in your plenary session. This is very important for the planet, and here we are for your disposal and at your service. Yeah, thank you so much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. And finally, we will welcome Ana Fornells de Frutos.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers for all the efforts of organizing this very important plenary on biodiversity. I will be very brief because I don't want to take much time to panelists. The science is clear. Biodiversity loss is driven by unsustainable production and consumption, and is accelerating at an unprecedented rate. And the actions taken so far haven't been enough. They are not enough. We are lagging behind the implementation of SDG 14 and SDG 15. And there is a need for urgent action. We need to accelerate progress, and we need higher ambition, as you all know. Actions to address biodiversity must be based on scientific knowledge and information. This is crucial. That's why we need to continue to invest and promote on scientific knowledge base. Cooperation and technology transfer is crucial. And we need to improve the availability and integration of such knowledge into policy decisions. This plenary, it's a very good opportunity to generate that political momentum that is needed and mobilize the actions needed. Let me finalize by saying that at the end of the year, it will be the turn of governments and countries. We need to approve an ambitious and transformative post-2020 global biodiversity framework at the COP15 in Montreal, as you all know. Spain will give all its support, and it's doing everything to ensure that we'll reach this goal. Our government has formally announced a roadmap for the consecution of tangible goals to increase the protection of terrestrial marine habitats and species. We cannot miss this opportunity. We don't have more time, and we only have one planet. So thank you very much for this very important plenary.
Thank you very much, Anna. You're very welcome, and indeed, again, thanks to our gracious hosts. And I don't need to remind anybody of the challenges organizing anything in New York during UNGA. I mean, we've learned lots of lessons. There's lots of stories, indeed. So please, again, you have come to the table. You've made this happen in very, very short order. So we do not underestimate that. And without your facilities and support, these meetings can't take place. So it's very important. So thank you. Now we move to the opening, and really, honestly, when I look at the list of our contributors and speakers today, I mean, I feel humbled. So I'm not sure there's a lot I can really add, but maybe just let me provide some words of, I suppose, context. And what we're doing here, really, these weeks at the Science Summit, which are running as a side event to the General Assembly. Very simply, what we want to do is engage, we want to share, we want to build awareness, we want to create and co-design science in all its shapes. And today we'll hear lots about that, and indeed in the weeks ahead. Just really a short comment on our priorities or our main themes. And our first one is inclusion. And of course, that means many things to many people. And indeed, today we've heard about the leadership from Andalusia. We're going to welcome the ministers from variously Cambodia, from Burkina Faso, from Nigeria and Mongolia here today, amongst many others. And I'm just pointing to them. I mean, there are a wide range. So I just want to point out that this collaboration between, for example, a region in Spain and the country of Spain and these countries is something we need to enable and foster right across the world. And again, it points to the need and benefit of bringing people together for these discussions. So inclusion is hugely, hugely important. However, upon reflection, inclusion means more than bringing people together, in my view. And we've heard a lot about this in meetings preceding, and we're going to hear a lot more about it. But in my view, inclusion means including and extending the range of people who have access to scientific data globally. And in my unscientific analysis, I think scientific excellence really is arguably, and again, this is a longer conversation, but if you just forgive me if I can characterize it, is probably the preserve of maybe 15 or 20 OECD countries. So the question I ask is, what about everybody else? Now, clearly, we're not going to be building light sources or synchrotrons in Ouagadougou anytime soon. That's clear. However, how do we include others in the science process? And the answer I've come up with, and again, others will have other views and we'll hear more about this, but is access to data. And I think that's significant because today our focus, I suppose the foundation of our discussion is on biodiversity data. We're going to look at systems, but how does that contribute to inclusive science and how does it contribute to the science process? So inclusion is hugely important. And again, this enables a number of things that are necessary for science cooperation to take place at global level. That is the enabling policy environment. It is the enabling regulatory environment, and deliberately, thirdly, not firstly, thirdly, access to funding. Because without the two preceding contexts, then the funding really can be dissipated, wasted. Of course, scientists need money, there's no question about that. But I think we need to see how can this be, and the key word is enable. So that's our first theme throughout the 2 weeks. And I would highlight that we have over 400 sessions. We have at the moment just under 1,400 speakers. So really a tremendous community together in person and online. Our second horizontal theme, if you like, for the time ahead. And of course, when I talk about the summit, this has to be a process. It cannot be a series of meetings or a meeting. It has to be a process. And we have to see this as part of an ongoing process, and we need to continue to look forward together. Within that context, the second theme is how can development finance support further the scientific process at global level? And again, longer discussion, but simply put, you will know development finance to be the work of the World Bank and the IMF and the IFC. And I was absolutely amazed to discover that apparently, and please provide correct versions of these figures if you can, there are approximately 400 development banks in our world, all doing, and I hasten to add, wonderful work. However, again, science collaboration and the outputs of that process really contribute to how development finance can do its objectives, as well as promoting the synergies between development finance, other forms of government finance, private sector finance, philanthropic finance, and all the other sources that we are aware of. So I think the synergies there are hugely important. So there you go. That's what we're here to do. A very warm welcome to everybody. I would now like to turn, it gives me great honor to welcome Enrico Alonso, who is of the Council of State in Spain. And you can see his bio. I think we probably wouldn't have time in the entirety of today to list his accomplishments, but we can just really give him a very warm welcome for taking the effort to travel here to New York today to be with us and to inspire us. Enrique.
Thank you, Declan. Actually, so maybe don't take too much into account my CV. It's simply that I'm getting old. It's very old. But the life simply changes every minute and it has celebrated. So forget about it. But just as I've been involved in policy making and also in science since I'm a university professor, 4 in the US universities, 3 in Spain, 1 in Asia, Kyoto, etc. So I've been doing this for quite a long time. If you allow me, and thank you so much after the Spanish mission to LifeWatch, etc., and Declan for inviting me. I think that we are already, all of us would be thankful. It's a good thing that I know you here in the mission, at the direction of the minister. Now, as I imagine, this doesn't work, so we need to keep on. I'm gonna actually just very briefly try in 5 minutes, which for me is impossible, so just simply kick me off when I run much more than expected. So the idea for me is, okay, don't think that this is new. It's been there forever. I remember when I was a little kid in 1872, actually you weren't even born. This is a joke, but Yellowstone was created the first ever national park of the world, and it was exported into Spain, Sweden, etc. There are 2 models, the American, etc. But it was. Basically, although it's true, it was mostly heritage. Americans said we don't have cathedrals, we don't have what we have nature, so let's make heritage, but it had a scientific basis. So it had been working for decades actually, and I don't want to go also the decades actually, because it would take approximately 7 classes of my US environmental history course that I teach every year. Doesn't make sense. So the question is, I focus on in the last 50 years, actually, because 1971, which seems to be one day that has sort of gone past, was the first time when the modern world, democracies, etc., just 1 year before the famous summit of Stockholm actually, was when the Ramsar Treaty and what that was signing. It's the first international treaty that made everybody focus on science. So science went on from a classic heritage and forestry background, because there were only the forestry engineers, into ecology that was created during the century, to conservation biology. And that was at the international level as well as the local level, but it's a process in which you have combined that movements that took place at the local level were a consequence and up to also a cause of international movements in which we have thousands of treaties. And I've been following Ramsar since then, since 1971. I was there in Persia when it was done. I was a small kid when it happened. I've been following CITES. We have a meeting actually in Madrid on trying to have CITES with a new police structure in BioCrimeNet, which is a world structure for the whole police that foresees and implements CITES, illegal trafficking, and endangered species. So it's been there forever. Actually, it's true that 20 years later, after 1981, I was part of the people who did negotiate and actually drafted the 7 articles of the CBD, the Convention on Biodiversity in Rio before the summit. And of course, science is a very important. It was for the first time mentioned. There are 7 articles in the CBD that talk about technology transfer, exactly the pronouns that you were saying. Actually, there are 7. Some of them, I drafted them directly. The ABS, the access to genetic resources, which was recognized as sovereign, so to say, sovereign domain of part of sovereignty, actually. So the gene structure of species that do exist only in one country are within the sovereignty of that country. And that was a very important decision. And that's the reason why the US hasn't signed the treaty. It's the only country in the 2 million states that we have nowadays that they don't sign it, but they are very, very loyal to its implementation. Actually, so that led to another great. It's true that science and the CBD have always been a little bit dragging their feet. That's the reason why the subsidiary body, which was supposed to provide science, got immediately politically sort of directed, and then GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, had to be created. And GBIF is dragging the feet, so IPES has to be created there in Paris, and IPES, with all my respect, is still not getting to do its job. Always you have the political influence, and it takes some difference. It is true that meanwhile the technologies, the science changed, especially I was part of the team that in Spain actually and in Europe and many other countries prepared Natura 2000. That was the use of technology, mostly the GIS, the Geographic Information System, that was applied, and it's a technology that was created by my colleagues, actually, 7 colleagues, etc., at Harvard University. So the possibility of including maps, literally, in the management of biodiversity was there. And we are now 20 years later. Actually, we had the Rio Summit of Frutos, and we are looking at how the Sustainable Development Goals. But in terms of science, because the SDGs are policy, in terms of science, what's the big difference? That all this has accumulated, something that has allowed for the creation of new infrastructures. It happens. Biodiversity happens everywhere. We went from the gray infrastructures, the Industrial Revolution, highways, railroads, etc., into green infrastructure, which is quite new, and many countries started to implement it. Let us know in the full territory, which has, an importance as a green infrastructure for everybody to be there, because if we don't use that as an infrastructure, the whole system collapses. But now we have also, and it's combined with what is called e-knowledge infrastructure. Knowledge can become an infrastructure. That's an idea, actually, of the 12th century in Europe. Knowledge, when you share it, it becomes structural and infrastructural force if you open it and have that value. Very quickly, that's the reason why I wanted to reach there, because ultimately, LifeWatch, which is invited, is, up to my knowledge, the first attempt to do a global infrastructure in this sense, an e-knowledge infrastructure, but it has to take into account that there are other infrastructures and how to build it. Let's go then quicker if that works. Yeah, okay. So the question is, where are we? Actually, it's true that we have been doing a lot of knowledge and has allowed it, but I go a little bit afterwards to see what does this infrastructure incorporate and what are still the problems that it has to be solved for it to work as an infrastructure. The good thing about it, as I said, GIS is very good. I don't know why LifeWatch hasn't got the best GIS experts of the world. It should be very easy because GIS is now manageable by many people. So please do it. Actually, if you don't have maps, you cannot control biodiversity. At the level, it's just being able to have a picture from here and have a picture from another planet. Of course, data availability, Declan has talked, that is true. We have trillions of data available every day. The question is how to manage it. But you have also to create management systems with the two other sciences, which are the different applications. I'm not going to explain what the VR is, the virtual research environments, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and even the new ones, you know, in behavioral analytics, that's what they are being used at the commercial time. What do, how do people decide based on the way the data is given to them, etc. All this, which I teach in the school at Harvard, courses, is what it still needs, and that it does exist. The question is, how do you apply all this to biodiversity to make it to have sense? The good thing about it is that it has allowed to be able to look at the same problems, issues, biodiversity at the 6 spatial levels, from the very local to the planetary global idea at the same moment, in the same time. You can do that also in time without any problem, literally at the same time. It's only 3 minutes that takes every signal to go from one place to the other part of the world. You have also that at all levels of biodiversity, because biodiversity starts at the genetic level or even pre-genetic level, I would say, literally the pre-bio diversity, and now it's going into a huge a new idea, which is landscape, ecological landscape, which is not even cited in the CBD. It's a new sentence which allows you to work in all the scales of biodiversity. And the question is, okay, can we have disruptive science? I think we can. Very quickly, images, these are all projects in which I'm working now. We were able to locate only in 2 months, literally, which are the areas in which you have all wild equids there, actually horses, not zebras, etc., all over the world, and locate where it is. And for Spain, we discovered that suddenly it's one of the places, Spain and Portugal, in which that has happened. And we did that using data only in 1 month. And I can tell you exactly all the places because I know them very well, but we have wild equids nowadays. So what is the role of wild equids in biodiversity conservation, grasses, etc.? In terms of time, it's even more impressive because now we can control exactly from Aristotle to the latest findings. One of them was last month finding, actually, you know, I don't know whether you know, that plants have a statuses, and it's been discovered last month, actually, not only animals. So the idea of equilibrium and how does noise affect to your environment also is a thing that is united to plants like genetics with the roots that we are finding that they are both together, and you can scale that and see exactly in time how it operates quite easily, only in a few moments. And you can combine them in all types of species analysis for species. This is also work that was published just 2 months ago, actually, on the impact of underwater noise in non-mammals in the marine environment, which is a whole new world. And of course, you have here the idea that it could be disruptive. It should be disruptive. If you have an infrastructure, only this is too big, what is the main idea of disruption? That 4 eyes see more than 2 eyes. So if everybody has access to data in a sensible sense, they'll contribute much more because they have imagination and will use those data in ideas or for solving problems that the guy who puts there the data and set up the infrastructure didn't even imagine that it could be used for that purpose. That is what this disruptiveness is about. At the same time, per se, the digital world has very complicated issues nowadays. Biodiversity simply has to live with the fact that data management, even at the commercial level, has complicated issues, and I don't want to go there and see what does big data imply for science, for every realm, but that's been studied. The question is, of course, that applies to biodiversity. So it carries also its backpack, you know, its mochila, we say in Spain, actually, and you have to solve also this problem in conjunction, in common with the others. The disruptive, does it create a divide between the rich and the poor? Does it create in the working force, actually, There are huge problems that are typical of all this new technology, not especially of biodiversity. The question is focusing on biodiversity, which is the simplest. Still, we tend to think that there's that, but most of the data is still not accessible, and you lack interoperability. I didn't find yesterday in the plane when coming here idea. For example, in the case of Spain, in Malaga, if you look where is the limit of the baseline in Spain, you go there and see we have 8 lines because we have the sources of the data different, and we haven't got the slightest idea of where that Spain ends in that piece, just in front of Malaga, because you have different lines. One of them are 2 kilometers wide, actually, just to give you an idea of that disaster. So interoperability is of essence because you need to combine and reflect and build up quality. And I don't want to get into fair, etc. I think part of that process to try to keep on making sure the science reviews, etc. try to do their best, but still access to data is very complicated. It isn't not as open, and you can build an infrastructure based on open data. Okay, but what if the one that is correct is the one that is not open? What decision do you take? Now, also very clearly, and those are we have silos. Silos not in the sense of the digital world. When a new technology is there, we use it, and then we have to live with that technology, although you cannot improve it. The question is that science, if you have a lot of science, scientists, biodiversity science, are creating a lot of insight. I'll go very quickly through them. This is the list directly just to see some examples in which we are working now. Scientists are still very successful in the world in the last decade because they are reductionists. The guy who's an expert in this type of RNA analysis doesn't even care what the hell happens with the ADN analysis or with the cell analysis. So by definition, biodiversity has to be absolutely interactive. This is very funny. This is what is used for ex situ conservation of biodiversity, but all the zoos of the world that contribute to species which are endangered, what's their contribution that they could make to the species that are in situ, a tiger, the panda, etc. And if you look, all of them say, oh, veterinary science, the veterinarians are the ones who should be in control of the zoos because they know biodiversity. Oh, the veterinary care in terms of the well-being of that species and its contribution to biodiversity is only a very, very small piece. They use a technical name, welfare. And what about well-being of the animal? Does there any difference between well-being and welfare? It's a difference. So you have a lot. And we are now working on trying to see how veterinarians, biologists, etc., can get with the interaction with others to get into a more reasonable and more useful knowledge, because what they know is not enough. They are so professionally focused in what they do that they don't understand what the others say. And it's a question of power fight. So if the guy is there, biologist is there, going to impose its world and forget about the other one, because that's the one that I know. So I'll carry you to the area where I. The second. I mean, we're talking about digital technology. What about the real knowledge in terms of space, in terms of time, actually? So I don't know how many of you, are you Americans here? How many of you speak Native American languages? How many of you speak Anishinaabe? How many of you speak, what the hell do you know about the real America, about space and time? The ones that were here and have kept their history and can tell you exactly how biodiversity was before 1944, are you reasonably, you don't interact with them. This is the law of the Scrimieri at the Shulkin Nation in British Columbia, which we convinced the Supreme Court of Canada that since no white Western man had been ever there, Canada cannot pretend to control that territory. The Senate treaty, no, there was no single white man passing through that territory. So it has to be declared sovereign territory, and it has been declared. The question is, what are the consequences? And I can tell you a lot about the Scrimieri and how that's been done simply by the way of looking at how they manage forces. It's funny, but we convinced the Canadian Supreme Court, which is only a couple of years ago. The other question is the nomina. We use a lot of words. You'll hear people talking here about geodesign, about different concepts that are used by the digital world. But the question is that people understand the name, but they don't understand the logic behind the name. This is I'm working now. In Arabia, one of the most beautiful places, Alula, in Arabia, actually, and I went there, nobody understands what is landscape in terms of ecology. Believe me, nobody. And if I make here a survey, I'm convinced that none of you understand what is the logic of landscape as the main basic data that you need for infrastructure, because we stopped at the ecosystem level. And what about the combination of ecosystems? What the hell do we do? And what about cultural heritage? And I discovered just 2 months ago that literally they are trying their best, but nobody knows. Literally there, what does landscape policy and landscape science and technology imply? Literally. So, and this is the last one also, please be sure that you have to interact. This is a decision-making process that I did for CITES when CITES started to work on this area in the Secretariat 20 years ago, which is very funny. You have to look at it. Of course, to make decisions, science is the first one. You have to be sure that it is scientifically and technologically viable. If not, it's nonsense. But of course, is it economically reasonable or not? Because it might be scientifically wonderful, but it costs trillions. So forget about it. The question is, you have to deal with politics, because in a democracy or even in a non-democracy, you have to take decisions because you cannot pretend to conserve and preserve and use regional biodiversity without getting involved in the political process. And you have to have ethics. Be sure. Ethics is very, very important for biodiversity, not only for the Scrimieri Wieting, that they convinced the court that ethically didn't make sense for them to have them prove that there has been no white man. Why don't you have the white man proving that they have been here? Actually, which is the Canadian Constitution doesn't allow to do that. It gives them rights if they prove. They have to prove. Why is Mr. Trudeau the one that has to prove? Okay. So the question is ethics. It's also of essence. But don't forget that law is also of essence. Whatever we do, the rule of law is real democracy. If you don't have law, you don't have democracy. You have populism and you have a disaster. Democracy is the best known system, but it can be shit. It's the best one, but sorry, the best one is very, very low. We want real, serious standards of democracy and legitimacy. So the problem is sometimes people don't understand is that can be also regulated. Like there's an interaction. It has to be legal what you decide, because you don't go anywhere, you get into problems. At the same time, the law can tell you how to do science. Be absolutely sure. So scientists have to understand that in many cases, the science they have to buy is mandated already by law, exactly telling them what is the science that is of value or not. So they have to interact. This is the last one, actually, I say, because this is the process that I think that helps people better to understand. You have to make sure that science understands its role within all this context, just to make sure that it is. Sorry for taking probably more time than it is. I told you to give me a call on a slap if I didn't go, but that's my understanding of how things are at the stage in which we are. And that's the reason why we should have green infrastructures improving constantly and everything. Thank you so much. I apologize if I take it more.
No, Enrique, no, absolutely. A tour de force, astonishing. I am sure many have learned so much, and I think you provide a wonderful background to our conversation today. And we'll hear more from you later. Thank you, thank you. I would now like to turn to Athanasos Kyriasis, the Secretary General for Research and Innovation in Greece. Dr. Kyriasis, do you hear me?
Hello, thank you very much.
You are very, very welcome. Thank you for making the time. The screen is yours, Dr. Kyriasis.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is a special honor and pleasure to participate today in the English scientific session of the United Nations General Assembly, which is being held these days in New York. Increasingly, nowadays, governments, communities, and many international organizations are realizing that smart investments in climate change preparedness and resilience can prevent natural hazards from becoming human disasters. At the same time, these investments can have other benefits, such as job vacancies, creation, economic growth, more education opportunities, improvement of gender equality, and environmental protection. Of particular importance should be the contribution of research policymakers to raising public awareness of the role and contribution of science and innovation in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The COVID-19 crisis has served as a wake-up call to correct our deteriorating relationship with nature, and confirmed that biodiversity is fundamental to human health and critical to sustainable development. Biodiversity reduction and the risk of future pandemics have many common root causes. Forest degradation and habitat fragmentation that bring people and wildlife into ever greater contact. More effective biodiversity policies can reduce the risk of future pandemics, potentially by a fraction of the economic and social costs associated with a global pandemic. The application of science and technology can significantly reduce both the loss of human lives and the degradation of the environment, as well as the areas in which we act every day. According to the above, research institutions and academia play a decisive role in the development of new crisis management methods and promote cutting-edge technologies, significantly reducing the risk from them. The tools and methodologies developed in recent years have proven useful in many cases, both in restricting the effects of climate change and in dealing with crises resulting from it. Greece has integrated into its priorities as they are defined through the national smart specialization strategy of the 2021 to 2027 programming period, 8 major thematic areas that are all related to the topic of today's scientific session. Our new research and innovation strategy supports the development directions of the country and aims at usable results for the benefit of society and the citizens. We aim to increase our efforts to conserve and restore biodiversity, address climate change in ways that limit the rise in global temperatures without imposing unintended pressures on biodiversity, while simultaneously evolving the way we produce, consume, and trade goods and services based on but also affect biodiversity. Nature has the solution to many of our sustainable development issues, hence the need to work with it. This means greater efforts and needed from all of us to address the direct and the indirect factors of diversity loss. These include taking integrated and holistic approaches in designing and implementation and greater interaction between policymakers, economic sectors, and society. As a result, biodiversity has become a global issue of great concern, but the willingness of world leaders to confront these issues can on beckons positive news for the future. We have a unique opportunity before us to rethink and transform our relationship with nature while advancing community and global health. We must seize the opportunity as we are all part of the solution. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kyriasis, for taking the time and for sharing your thoughts and inspirations with us today. Thank you indeed. And I think as a key part of the decision-making firmament, it's important that you're able to show us your perspectives, and I think this needs to be connected again with the conduct of science. So thank you so much. Immaculada, Figueroa is at the meeting in CERN, and she will join us slightly later than advertised. So we look forward to speaking to her later. I now would like to invite Ana Stewart Ibarra. She is the director for the Institute for International and Inter-American Cooperation. Immaculata?
Me? Okay.
Oh, this is a wonderful surprise.
Okay. I go.
You're most welcome. Thank you indeed.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to the Ministry of Science and Innovation of Spain to be part of this event. We are really glad for joining today, especially in two folds, because Spain is the host country of LifeWatch ERIC, the research infrastructure on the e-science research infrastructure on biodiversity, and is also a member of the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF, the two organizations convening this Biodiversity Plenary. We would like also to thank the Intelligence in Science organization in order for being behind the Science Summit in the frame of the United Nations General Assembly 77. And of course, the strong thank also to the Spanish mission in New York for offering the facilities for having this meeting today. My idea is just to share with you the importance of the research infrastructures to address the global grand challenges, like the preservation of biodiversity as a main contribution for fighting to climate change is. The European Strategy for Rural Research Infrastructures, well known like ESFRI, established in 2002 in Europe, brings together national governments, the scientific community and the European Commission with the intention to support a coherent strategy lead approach to research infrastructures in Europe. The aim of ESFRI is equipping Europe with infrastructures for groundbreaking research. To this intention, ESFRI has a main tool that is called the ESFRI Roadmap. The ESFRI Roadmap identifies European investment priorities on research infrastructures in Europe and provides direction for their further development. It's not identified, it's also accompany the infrastructures in the development and the construction of these infrastructures, looking into the future challenges of research infrastructures policy. While initially or mainly research infrastructures are seen like a tool for supporting research, attending to the demand of the scientific community, offering resources, services, and data for doing this research. However, the research infrastructure are much more than that. They are centers for knowledge transfers to the society and also to the economy in general, and also play an important role in the training of researchers and fostering science literacy. In addition, research infrastructure are also the forerunner of data exploitation, science digitalization, data engineering, and data management. And thus, it is indispensable for answering through the research infrastructure to these global challenges that we face at global level. Research infrastructure have also an important and growing role in policy making, as they can contribute to cross-sectoral strategies and to increasing the coherence between the global, regional, and national priorities and policies. Furthermore, research infrastructure are strategic investments into economic growth and sustainable development for all of our countries, and require an effective synergy of regional, national, European, and global policies and funding instruments. Focusing in our topic today, biodiversity, we need to refer to the environmental infrastructures. Environment is one of the 5 areas, scientific domains, in which is organized the ESFRI roadmap, and respond to the increased needs on environmental, social, and economic challenges. Environmental research as scientific domain focuses on understanding how the Earth system works at various spatial and temporal scales. Therefore, requires comprehensive observation with relevant experimental and modeling approaches. All of these are essential for understanding and predicting the Earth's environmental system functions. To this purpose, environmental research infrastructure are key to provide systematic and coherent data sets needed for research addressing climate, natural resources, health, food security, and biodiversity. And they demand a federated approach to information technology resources and science facilities, together with reliable data policies compliant with the FAIR principle. The environmental research infrastructure acts as centers of frontier research on grand environmental challenges and focal points for education and training of researchers, contributing to the skills, to the development of the skills and the future leaders in the concept of life and sustainable planet. The research infrastructure, the environmental research infrastructure generates coherent, comparable and sustained time series of key environmental variables, provide accurate large data sets and new solutions based in artificial intelligence to share this data for increased scientific and technical knowledge. They also deliver essential data for more reliable communication to the public. That is very important, especially we have seen in Spain in the communication, for instance, as related with the volcanic eruption in La Palma. They offer also access to environmental big data from space-based and in-situ observation as key driver for the development of new services and for promoting activities in the private sector. They are also promoting innovation and are essential in the development of new technologies. Understanding biodiversity is critical to ensure a sustainable Earth for the future. And this includes knowledge about terrestrial, marine and freshwater ecosystem, its structural components, how they interact with each other, and also with the human activities. The goals set by the United Nations, jointly with the European Union Biodiversity Strategy, mark a path for biodiversity recovery by 2030, with involvement of citizens, businesses, social partners, and the research and knowledge community. The implementation of the strategy needs a sound scientific basis that research infrastructures such as LifeWatch offer the way to do it. We can underline that only 1/4 of the existing species on Earth were estimated to be known to science. Many species will become extinct without being discovered, and their potential benefits in terms of food, medicine, and ecosystem services will be lost. The loss of biodiversity decreases ecosystem services and affects ecosystem functioning and stability. Life in oceans also depends on sustainable management of resources and protection of coastal areas from effects of pollution. Plastics in marine environments are a real threat to wildlife. The S3 LifeWatch ERIC, with its cross-domain approach and focus on grand challenges for preserving biological diversity and the protection of the ecosystem health, enables knowledge-based solution to environmental managers by providing access to a multitude of sets of data, services, and tools about the role of biodiversity in ecosystem functioning and conservation. To all of that, we would like to also add that one of the most relevant aspects related to the research infrastructure is the importance of the international cooperation in science. Research infrastructure contribute to this international cooperation. And the research cooperation is essential for addressing major global issues. Fostering research infrastructure partnerships across borders and continents has the potential to improve the efficiency and quality of research to tackle the many challenges faced by society today. To this internationalization, the European Union can contribute with experience has acquired through these years with the S3 roadmap, offering expertise and leadership in global research infrastructure projects. The European Union cooperation with priority countries and regions can be extended by explicitly including research infrastructures in the relevant strategy agendas. Spain is already doing that. Research infrastructure is one of the topics that we include in a general way in all the dialogue, bilateral dialogue with other countries and regions. This is also the case of the cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean region. ESRI and the research infrastructures, among them, especially LifeWatch, Eric, play an important role in the implementation of the EU LAC strategy roadmap for science, technology, and innovation, being example and driver for the implementation of its third pillar, the cooperation on research infrastructures. For the implementation of this collaboration, the Ministry of Science of Spain coordinates the EU project towards a new EU-LAC partnership in research infrastructure, known as EU-LAC ResInfra, that is well supported by Latin American and Caribbean and European Union partners. Some of them are present today in this meeting, such as the Agencia Uruguaya de Cooperación Internacional. That we will have opportunity to hear afterwards. In summary, I have tried to share with you and put the attention about ESPRI, the body in Europe that establishing the policy in research infrastructures, the importance of research infrastructures not only in the production of groundbreaking research, but also as centers for training, formation, and knowledge and transfer hubs, the important role of environmental research infrastructure in giving answers to global challenges, and the main role of LifeWatch as science infrastructure facilitating environmental managers access to a large amount of data and offering a broad catalog of tools and services around biodiversity, in ecosystems, and conservation. That's all, and again, thank you very much for making me room to be part of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Figueroa. That was really inspiring. Thank you for focusing on the European Union research infrastructure process, which, as I understand now, has some, shall we say, global orientations, if not ambitions. And again, we don't want to promote a European bias. However, there are some good examples. I also am reflecting on the fact while you were speaking that next year, the United Nations will conduct the Summit of the Future during the Spanish Council presidency. So I'm looking forward to many synergies with that context in mind. So thank you so much for making your stuff available this morning. I know you have a tremendously busy program. So thank you, Immaculada. Now I'd like to turn to Anna Stewart-Ibarra. Anna, do you hear me?
Thank you, Declan. Yes, I will share my screen, and please let me know when you can see it. Can you see my slides?
Perfect.
Sorry, hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, great. Thank you so much, and I will share some brief comments. So my name is Anna Stewart-Ibarra. I'm the Science Director of the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research, and we are based in Montevideo, Uruguay. As an intergovernmental organization, the IAI serves 19 countries of the Americas to support international cooperation and the full and open exchange of scientific information related to global environmental change. And I would like to express sincere thanks to Declan and other organizers of this year's summit. Latin America is one of the most biodiverse and culturally diverse regions of the world. It is also one of the most socially unequal regions, and these inequalities have deepened following the COVID-19 pandemic. As we've heard all week, there's an urgent need for scientific evidence that can support locally relevant, appropriate, and impactful actions and policies to address the multiple social and ecological crises that are unfolding around us. So how do we go about this? At the IAI, our science agenda is focused on transdisciplinary research on global environmental change. Research on biodiversity is a pillar of the agenda linked directly to human dimensions. So to better understand this approach, I'd like to share perspectives of two early career scientists who are IPBES authors, experts on biodiversity in Latin America, and science policy fellows at the IAI. The Argentine Chaco has gone from being one of the largest forested regions on the continent to one of the largest deforestation frontiers in just 30 years. In this article, Dr. Matias Mastrangelo and co-authors express concerns that the disconnect between international forums where solutions are being sought and the territories and their inhabitants is evident. And they call for new ways of linking science and territories with decision-making centers. These new ways focus on joint production or co-production of science between local residents, scientists, decision makers, and other territorial actors. They have adopted this approach in the Chaco region in a project funded by the IAI, generating spaces for the dialogue of knowledge and spaces for negotiation between the parties. And they found that the co-design of the research increased the interest and commitment of partners who were usually reluctant to share common goals or engage in collective work. Co-implementing the research enabled social learning and the inclusion of young people who will be the future decision makers regarding biodiversity management in this complex agricultural landscape. They also found that this process resulted in building trust among partners who had conflictive past relationships. In this next example, Dr. Lila Sandroni shares her experiences working in the Amazon region. Over the last 34 years, the Amazon has lost almost 200,000 square kilometers of forest, an area larger than that of Uruguay. Earth observations from satellite imagery are providing detailed information about changes in land use, allowing humanity to monitor deforestation more closely than ever. However, Dr. Sandroni expresses concerns that in some cases, these data have been used to unfairly recommend and implement so-called environmental policies, resulting in the prosecution and economic punishment of indigenous peoples and farmers for carrying out traditional farming activities. And she goes on to state that in biodiversity conservation, decisions on where and how to install protected areas are usually based on scientific ecological data, which, although rigorous, does not represent the whole reality. Such decisions often ignore the perspectives of those who live in the areas to be protected, including the indigenous and local populations who have lived in these ecosystems for centuries and who do not have access to legal channels. She emphasizes that scientists have to learn to work with differences and recognize our place as brokers of diplomacy and critical thinking to build solutions together with the people and for the people. So what can we take from these experiences to guide future action around biodiversity? Biodiversity research, training, and funding should align with the principles of transdisciplinary research, which our fellows have described. And this requires mainstreaming of equity, diversity, and inclusion considerations in research, training, and funding to build equitable partnerships and to address historical injustices. We need to create tailored, accessible, and locally relevant capacity building programs in different languages for diverse actors on transdisciplinary skills, science diplomacy, and science communication. There is also a need for coordinated global funding of transdisciplinary biodiversity research operating at the science policy interface to generate usable and useful knowledge for decision-making. The Belmont Forum, which the IAI hosts, can support these efforts. This year, the IAI and FAPESP, the Science Funding Agency of Sao Paulo, are beginning a new global funding process with the Belmont Forum focused on the Amazon region. Finally, we need research policies and infrastructures that democratize access to data, information, and knowledge throughout the Americas and worldwide. However, simply increasing access to data is insufficient, as we heard in the example from the Amazon region. Data must be utilized in an ethical framework that links to the considerations of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So with that, I will conclude and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this session, and I look forward to learning from the other speakers today.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was really, really informative. You raised a lot of points which I would love to comment on, but I'm going to resist since we plow on with the agenda. And as I've said a number of times, this meeting is a process, and certainly the points you provided today will provide a very strong foundation for the discussions we are having and the process that we are embarking upon. So, Anna, we will have plenty further conversations. So thank you so much. I now am delighted. It gives me great honor to welcome Shamila Nair-Bedwell, the Director General for Natural Sciences from UNESCO. And I have known Shamila over a number of years, and Shamila does a really a tremendous number of things, but one of them that really impresses me is her ability to lead and inspire. And increasingly, this is what's needed. Is really leadership at global level, and in her work at UNESCO, she has many achievements. I had the honor to be with her in July at the launch of the UNESCO Year of Basic Science for Development, which I think speaks volumes in terms of what is necessary. And I think what we are doing here today, I would humbly suggest, can, if it doesn't already, but can contribute to this objective. Shamila, do you hear me?
Yes, I do, Declan. Thank you. Can you hear me or?
Loud and clear. Perfect. You're most welcome, Shamila. The screen and the floor are yours.
Declan, thank you very much, and delighted to join you here today. President of the General Assembly, honorable ministers, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It really gives me a great pleasure on behalf of UNESCO to address you here at this really very critical moment, and probably a historical moment in the world. First of all, let me sincerely thank and congratulate the government of Spain, the European Union, for convening this meeting. But let me sincerely thank Declan Kirrane, whom I've known for probably some 20 years, and delighted to join you again. And thank you for convening such an important event of science. I also want to thank LifeWatch, and thank you for inviting UNESCO to this very important dialogue. Excellencies, science is indeed a global public good, and established some 75 years ago, excuse me, UNESCO is a scientific enterprise. UNESCO's intergovernmental international scientific programs, which you, the member states, have built up, is really a unique United Nations system, because we recognize the tremendous power of science to shape the future of humanity. The world needs more science, more women, more men and scientists, but we need their recommendations. We need ancestral knowledge developed across generations to deal with each specific situation. Now, every 5 years, UNESCO produces the science report on behalf of the 194 governments and member states. This UNESCO science report of 2021 was produced at the time of COVID, and the title is The Race Against Time for Smarter Development. Of course, this is really a measurement and a yardstick every 5 years of the trends in science across the world. And this is UNESCO's responsibility, to bring science to you and to show you the tremendous power of science to shape our future. Now, international scientific collaboration to develop common pathways in order to manage biodiversity and the Earth's resources is central to the mandate of UNESCO in science. It really contributes not only to sustainable development, but to building a culture of peace and dialogue. Certainly, we need to protect people and the planet. We need to spread the power of knowledge. We need a shared scientific culture and knowledge, as our distinguished representatives have spoken before me and the government of Spain. But we can only do this via access to science, technology, and innovation, because this will drive creativity. This will enhance ability to address societal challenges, particularly in their own environment. Hence UNESCO's role and UNESCO's recommendation on open science, because this will be a game changer to change and reduce the knowledge gap between nations. Excellencies, dear participants, UNESCO's intergovernmental scientific international programs are powerful ways to create the momentum for governments to catalyze and to impact multilateral environmental efforts to protect and to restore our natural world on which all our economies and societies depend. Now I'd like to talk to you about nature and culture. UNESCO is fully committed to addressing the impact of climate change on biodiversity, on our cultural, our natural heritage. This is what we will leave to generations future. And UNESCO is undertaking this initiative on behalf of all its member states. Since 50 years, the UNESCO World Heritage Convention is the only unique international legal instrument that recognizes the intrinsic linkages between science, nature, and culture for holistic conservation of humanity's common heritage. With the over 1,100 sites currently inscribed to the World Heritage List, this is illustrative of the diverse ways in which people can use scientific data sets to inscribe unique Earth heritage. Now, some 51 years ago, you, the member states of UNESCO, crafted and designed a unique intergovernmental program in the United Nations system. This is the UNESCO Man and Biosphere Program. One of these valuable intergovernmental programs running for more than 50 years. This UNESCO MAB is the first intergovernmental program which focused on science and nature and sustainable development. It aims at a better understanding of the relationship between humans and natures, when in the 70s, the conservation tendencies were still tending to wrap nature in a cotton wool. But UNESCO's member states has foreseen this, that for MAB, nature is not just a panacea in terms of maintaining biodiversity. The conservation of biodiversity and the development of communities must go hand in hand. So these world network of biosphere reserves are really sites for sustainable development. They're open laboratories where a number of actions for biodiversity for nature are implemented together with communities and with governments. It's a network of 728 sites worldwide in 134 countries in all types of ecosystems, mountains and rivers and environmental situation. So UNESCO's MAB provides the unique opportunity as observatories for climate change, biodiversity, pollution, and for science to thrive. Now, I'll give you just a few examples of the Man and the Biosphere best practices across the world. We have a biosphere heritage of Lake Chad, the BioPelt project, commonly shared between Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Niger, Nigeria. It is home to 40 million people. They call this biosphere reserve their home. Their early warning systems for droughts and floods, restoration of degraded ecosystems, and some 3,000 women being empowered, economic empowerment to live on nature. We have wild plant resources, women empowerment, the case of Aganeria Biosphere Reserve in Morocco. We have the China Jinzhou, which is declared a biosphere reserve in 1997 because of its primary forest and rich biodiversity. We also have the improving climate change resilience through appropriate management of water resources in Utwe Biosphere Reserve, Federated States of Micronesia. In the north of Sumatra, Indonesia, 3 UNESCO Biosphere Reserves form a biological corridor that protects the area's distinctive and diverse biodiversity, including many endangered species. Jeju Island Biosphere Reserve, Republic of Korea, encompasses a lava plateau with a shield volcano and is providing clean energy solutions. So creating alternative incomes is also the Sao Paulo City Greenbelt Biosphere Reserve with 23 million people living locally. And strengthening indigenous peoples' governability of ancestral territories in Sierra Nevada de Santa Maria Biosphere Reserve, Colombia, is very important today. So dear colleagues, participants, Spain together with Morocco host the first ever intercontinental Mediterranean Biosphere Reserve. This Biosphere Reserve, declared by UNESCO in October 2006, contains some of the most outstanding natural spaces in the world. And it is the first of its kind to feature a whole sea within its boundaries. So thank you to the government of Spain and Morocco. Youth and women are key players for ecosystem restoration and protecting our biodiversity in this intergenerational solidarity and continuity. And we look forward to working with you on that. Now, I would like to briefly mention geodiversity. Geodiversity is the silent biodiversity's partner. And yet geodiversity is never spoken about. It's only the trees and the birds that we're able to see with the naked eye. Geodiversity gives us insight into climate and landscape change, such as mountains, caves, and coasts. And UNESCO is the only program in the world, in all of the UN, that hosts an international geoscience program and a geoparks for more than 50 years, building capacity in the earth sciences. UNESCO is strengthening capacity in earth sciences for thousands of scientists across the world. We must recognize geoheritage as part of our global heritage and our commons. We have 171 UNESCO global geoparks. We reconcile the protection of the unique geological heritage, sustainable development as intrinsic part of the relationship with nature, culture, and history. And at the 41st General Assembly of UNESCO, the governments have proclaimed International Day of Geodiversity on 6th of October 2022, including to ecosystem restoration. Dear participants, Your Excellencies, through its Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, UNESCO is leading the implementation of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. This global initiative, with its vision of the science we need for the ocean we want, will bring together actors across the globe to generate essential knowledge to underpin coastal, marine, ecosystem, and biodiversity restoration. Finally, UNESCO is fully committed to protect and restore our planet through education, science, culture, and communication. These are your programs. The UNESCO Earth Network is an international cooperation program in the area of biodiversity, oceans, and climate change, connecting all of UNESCO sites, experts, member states to restore relationships with nature and the ecosystem and empower youth. UNESCO is also leading the Human Nature Panel under the Decade of Restoration. And you give me 1 minute more, Declan. Excellent participants, thank you. The ambition to protect 30% of our planet is an important goal and a laudable goal, but it would be pointless if we continue to destroy the remaining 70% of ecosystems which sustain life everywhere. So UNESCO's ambition is a transformative change the mindset of 100% of humans so that they reconcile with the rest of nature and we all become custodians of Earth, our common home, that we inhabit and will transmit to future generations. We need to build the roots of a different attitude towards the role of science, solidarity, sustainability. For nature, in the minds of people, we need a new ethics of care, a new type of responsibility around our shared value for the living. As such, biosphere reserves are already a major contribution to the Convention of Biological Diversity targets. Now, in the unique UNESCO sites, biosphere reserves, World Heritage sites, geoparks, people experiment with new ways of protecting the planet. They bring local indigenous knowledge together in national ecosystems assessments. They experiment with green circular economy. They encourage citizen science, hardcore science. And in these sites, we have an non-exhaustive list of the role of nature. These knowledge streams are respected and come together in respect and harmony for the planet. These UNESCO sites already exist. The existing platforms, they are yours. They provide in situ solutions at local level to the global challenges of climate change, terrestrial, coastal, marine biodiversity loss, and water security. But they also engage with humans, with the culture, with the scientists, with education, with values, and the local indigenous knowledge populations. In these sites, communities manage responsibly their surrounding biological resources. Why? Because their water, their food, their livelihoods, their food security depends upon it. Now, dear participants, what we have not heard here today is fresh water. Fresh water is the thread that ties all aspects of society together. There's no biodiversity without water and no water without biodiversity. Water supports life on Earth. It also supports sustainable economic development. Healthy rivers, lakes, wetlands, aquifers, and glaciers not only provide drinking water, but they maintain our valuable ecosystems. Hence the UN Conference on Water next year. We must commit to protect our fresh water. And finally, dear participants, Your Excellencies, we need to restore nature by restoring the link between humans and nature. And UNESCO acknowledges that nature, science, culture, education are intertwined, interconnected, co-productive. And we need to have this diversity of possible transformational pathways and sustainable solutions, which is already demonstrated in our unique networks of sites, World Heritage, natural heritage sites, biosphere reserves, and geoparks. These sites are open laboratories to monitor climate change impacts on communities, to adapt, and these sites present. They are the present and the future science laboratories. They contain a wealth of scientific research, information, and data, which is accessible openly to everyone in the spirit of UNESCO, open and accessible to all of you. Thank you very much, Declan. Wishing you good deliberations, and dear colleagues, UNESCO is your home. Welcome home. Welcome home, Declan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shimila. That's so inspiring. We can hear okay? Echo, echo. Apologies. Very good. We're back in business. Shimila, absolutely inspiring. Great to be home. And if I can humbly suggest to the leaders here today that there is enormous scope, in my view, to build on the existing cooperation between EU initiatives and UNESCO leadership. And I feel this is really the opportunity. There can't be enough of that. And Immaculada will forgive me if I again highlight the enormous potential under the Spanish presidency for bringing UNESCO and the wonderful initiatives we've heard about today to the forefront, really during the Summit of the Future, during UNGA78 and during the Spanish presidency. I think these synergies are absolutely vital. I think Shimila has given us a really fantastic view, and indeed one that, although the challenges we face are enormous, I think she instills a certain, if not optimism, certainly confidence in the future, in our ability to address problems together in a shared fashion. I think we have to do it. There is no other ways. And I think today gives us a really good, I'm not going to say starting point, because of course many people are working very hard, so it's a question of building on, it's continuing. And I think it's looking forward to the synergies that can really be transformative. Shimila, thank you so much. I look forward to your future continuous involvement in this process. And again, I'm not saying it's new, but I am saying it's leveraging, and from where I'm standing, I think the horrible word that it is, but opportunity, I think is overused, but nevertheless, to really recognize the enormous convening power, potential, and ability of the UN. I think this is really, really now necessary more than ever, particularly in the area of science and scientific endeavor. Combining that with many examples, but today we're looking at a research infrastructure dedicated to biodiversity, and I think we can maybe argue that's an implementing aspect of what the UN is doing with other measures. So I think it's a wonderful example and a wonderful occasion to look at how we bring the future forward. So thank you again, Shimila. And I also hope that there will be a physical meeting between your good self in person and the ESRI and LifeWatch Eric leadership in the very near future. So thank you indeed. We stay in touch. Thank you so much. Our dear friend, His Excellency, the Minister of Science from Nigeria, Professor Mamora, is having difficulties linking in. But we come back to him. So now we go to Arturo Luis Luna Tapia, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation from the Republic of Colombia. And you will see he's just remained extremely still for the last couple of minutes, and you will know that's because he will be speaking to us via video. So now somebody will click the button and we will hear from His Excellency Arturo Luis Luna Tapia.
On behalf of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation of the Republic of Colombia, I would like to extend a warm greeting to all the respected colleagues and honorable assistants of this event. It is an honor to have been invited to address you in this Biodiversity Plenary. In Colombia, we are in the process of building a new national development plan that has 3 pillars: total peace, social justice, and environmental justice. For our government, the conservation of the environment is a great priority. Colombia is the second most megadiverse country in the world, with 67,000 species registered according to our biodiversity information system. In addition, we have 311 continental and marine ecosystems. We highlight the Amazon biome of great global importance for its cultural and biological diversity, and its role in carbon capture and storage, which is key in the context of the climate crisis. Learning about our biodiversity is fundamental to establish the appropriate management of natural resources, to achieve sustainable development and reduce the negative impacts caused by human activities on ecosystems. Only through knowledge it is possible to establish alternatives for the use and conservation of natural resources that will guarantee their long-term sustainability. In this regard, Colombia is facing a crucial moment of great opportunities. We must take advantage of the peace scenario to generate a vindication with the environment and with those communities that have been direct victims of violence and what it entails. Peace will allow access to areas where the conflict has been going on for more than half a century. We support the development of scientific expeditions to unexplored places, where it was previously impossible for scientists to develop biological inventories. On this subject, we will launch the first expedition on agrobiodiversity in Montes de Maria, a region affected by violence for decades in the north of the country. This project aims to generate applied knowledge on biodiversity and its functions to promote innovative rural enterprises. Likewise, the research incorporates sustainable agro-ecosystem based on community work in context of tropical dry forest transformation and climate change. Furthermore, Colombia's Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation supports universities, research centers, and companies to develop bioproducts such as new foods, cosmetics, and medicines that are based on the sustainable use of biodiversity. Our country has a critical mass of researchers with experience in biotechnological processes, ready to work with international partners. Colombia, scientific cooperation with other countries is very relevant in areas associated with biodiversity, biotechnology, and bioeconomy. Within our ministry, we have managed to establish alliances with international partners such as the European Union, the UK government, the Inter-American Development Bank, the Global Green Growth Institute, and all other allies of great importance. Finally, to face the great global challenge on the loss of biodiversity, we must work as a network. That is why we invite you to collaborate with us and with our scientists to do high-quality science that has impact on decision-making and develop cutting-edge technology that consequently will help to reduce social gaps. I thank you all once again for your presence and your attention at this important event that encourages us to continue working together to promote scientific cooperation between our countries. Thank you.